as you've developed hard IQ, I'm curious, like there's this, I imagine there's this before the field and after the field moment where it was like doing workshop, and there was a time when you were doing workshop, and then there was a time where something shifted and you went more into this style of field facilitation, as I and you would call it. And I'm curious, like what that time looked like for you. What happened that created that shift?
Yeah. I was in Sydney in Australia back in 2005, and I was invited to deliver a workshop. I was working for Neil Donald Walsh. He was the guy who created the Conversations with God series of books that were super popular back in the 90s. Yeah, and he tasked me to put on a retreat with a few of his other facilitators in Sydney. It was a facilitator training. And I was doing my traditional front of the room facilitation style. And there was a client, a participant in the group that I was working with, and there was a resistance that she was feeling. And I would go down my traditional route where I confronted her. And back then I was quite highly confrontative as a facilitator. If somebody came up with a block, it would be like, okay, let's get the crowbar out and let's work on that thing. It wasn't really trauma informed. It was more like hard truths, meet your eggs, we're not going to let you kind of like abandon yourself. Let's go for it. It was more gung-ho push. And yeah, I hadn't really developed these other parts of my facilitator range back then. And I remember one of the guys sitting in the circle, his name is Tej Steiner, and he saw this going on, and he was like, what are you doing? This is not the way. And I remember that moment very strongly, going, okay, what's he talking about? What's the other way? And so the next day, when this retreat ended, I attended Tej's portion, because we were kind of like doing bit each, right? So over these 10 days, I did my bit, he did his bit. And so I showed up and turned up to his bit, and he was doing circle work. And I watched how people melted through an environment of coherence. And instead of him as a facilitator processing the emotion and supporting through a didactic interaction, he was like working with like, how does the field open? And then when we're in that field, the field then penetrates us rather than the facilitator penetrating us. And what I saw in those 4 days was just sheer magic. And it was like a language I'd always known. I recognized it. And it was instantly fluent. Nobody had to teach me that. I literally took that imprint of like, there's a reversal here. It's not me doing the work. It's, I need to listen to the field and I had to reverse nearly everything that I had in my mind about how to normally facilitate and lead a workshop. It was going from a yang masculine first approach to a yin first approach. And I had a retreat 2 weeks later in Bali, in Indonesia, scheduled. And it was going to be my traditional front of the room delivery, do my thing. But I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to turn it into a circle. And then I realized, it's not as easy as I thought. It was like 38 people in a circle. It was my first ever circle. And I thought, well, I've seen it once. How hard could it be?
Oh my gosh.
And I remember at the end of that retreat, not even at the end, one day before it ended, and I was like, I think I'm going to quit. I don't think I ever wanted this. It was so ridiculously confrontative, and the dynamics that showed up, the vulnerability, the exposure for me, like I had to, like all my blind spots came up, all of my inner world came out, all this entrainment happened, all these kind of confrontations to my authority showed up, like everything that I could control with the traditional way of facilitating crumbled, and now I was exposed. And I instantly got confronted with like all the all the medicine that I needed to take, but I couldn't take it all in that moment. I needed to titrate it. I needed to, and I'm so glad I didn't give up in that moment, but I then went on a journey and over the years began to build a relationship with the field. And when I say a relationship, I deeply have a communion with the energy that comes alive and emerges when a group of people gather together. It's like an entity, its own essence or personality or flavor. There's like something I can plug into, and it's something I can talk, I can commune, I can relate. There's an intimacy with the field itself, and I'm listening and I'm feeling, and we're collaborating together. And I've learned to plug into that, like in the film Avatar, where we bring our tails up and hook into Pandora's natural
mycelial network.
Mycelial network. Yes, I think that's a great analogy. I think we have a mycelial network in our nature, but we also have like an energetic mycelial network that comes alive when groups of people open their hearts and come into coherence. The key here is coherence, because you can get a group of people who are really in their head, who are just talking problem and solution, and put them in a room, and you won't get an amplified field. You get a very incoherent energy, and it won't bring about change and transformation. So I'm talking about a very specific type of group coherence where we create a lot of safety and resonance, so much so that the nervous systems in that group relax. And it's not a conscious rest relaxation. It's a relaxation that unwinds at the deepest part. And this natural intelligence of the body emerges. So we often have this saying in Hard IQ that says all healing has its time. We don't have to prepare, plan, or come with an agenda. We just need to be and open and allow and trust that the body's natural intelligence will reveal what needs to be met, how and when, and what step is needed, if any. So that's the kind of short, long story of the of my transition from workshop facilitator to field facilitator. It was a rite of passage. It was highly confrontative, and I had to U-turn nearly on everything, but primarily the energy of bringing me into the space versus listening to the field and guiding the space. There is definitely something there that had to shift, and it was a brutal shift for me personally.
I really love the way you explained this time. I've never heard you say it in quite this way, where it wasn't you penetrating the person, but shifting to allowing that to come from the field. Like the way that you described that landed in me, and I haven't heard it quite that way before. And it's it flips facilitation on its head for anyone who is doing the traditional masculine directive style relationship facilitation. And that kind of viscerally, even for me, lands it where your listening needs to realign or reroute. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that. It's one of my favorite questions right now to ask facilitators, which is, how do you listen? Like, what if you could just take us there with you? A group comes in. What are some of the things you're listening for? What are some of your secret tools and techniques for how you're tuning to and plugging in? And what are you tracking?
Well, the first thing that I'm listening for takes place even before the people enter the room. I can begin to feel and sense through my personal experience in life, potential themes, sticking points, contractions, topics, because I've realized nothing is personal. Everything is personal and collective. And so I've learned to listen to the fact that my life experience, especially in the weeks leading up to an event, are often signposts for what may be coming or what may be alive in the field. There's a precognition quality to the field. The field carries information that is not synced to normal time, space, continuum. So therefore, three-dimensional time and space don't always apply to the field, which means I can get precognition. I can get awareness of what's going to happen before it's happened in 3-dimensional space and time. Now, I can't tell you the mechanics behind that, but all I can say is that, especially through the dream space, I will often get insight, information, sometimes downloads of full processes where the energy of what is needed and the space and range that I need to meet it in automatically come in the days before the event. And it's to varying degrees. It doesn't always happen, but I need to start listening way before the event starts. So there's the dreams, there's my themes of my personal life, and then translating that into the transpersonal. But then when we get into the room, it's very much a combination of intuitive and somatic integration. So being very present with especially this area in my solar plexus. I feel the field through this channel. Not everybody does. Like when the field gets tight and contracted, it's because truth or something that wants to move that's potentially alive isn't moving. So the field kind of liberates when there's honoring of what wants to happen and what wants to move and the aliveness, and it contracts when there is conditioning coming into the field. It's not so much truth or lie, it's whether something is wanting to move that's alive, and if there is a blockage to that aliveness or there's conditioning. And where I feel that contraction of the field is through often the solar plexus and my face and my head. So when my face gets hot, tired, heavy eyes, heat in the cheeks, tension, I can often now differentiate between when is it the field and when is it me personally triggered, anxious, frustrated, impatient, my own process, my own stuff. So as facilitators, we need to learn, when is it mine, when is it the field? Because I can be completely contracted in a calm field and completely calm in a contracted field. Those two are not mutually the same thing. So I've had to learn to become a tuning fork to what is happening and what is being felt here. And my first layer of feeling is tuning into tension. Tension is my guide. Like, is it feeling like a sticky, resistant, heavy? Is it like kind of walking through tree core? Am I in my own head trying to force this point through? Or am I kind of like taking more time to feel and go, okay, there's something here that maybe isn't spoken? Because often when we don't speak into something that wants to be spoken, it creates tension. So I need to listen more, become more receptive. So these are some of the ways. And then often it's like I honor the spontaneous, what I would call pop-up. But it doesn't mean it literally pops up. It could pop down. But it's those weird moments where I go, I just had this memory come in. I just had this image from my childhood, or I just had this thing coming in. It's almost like I don't take anything for granted and assume that it's all by accident. It doesn't mean it all means something. I don't say that, oh yeah, every single thought must have a meaning. But I get curious about what happens to my mental images, my thought process, my somatic experience. And this is how I listen to the field. The field doesn't come through as a little voice behind my ear that says, welcome, Christian, to day 2 of the retreat. We've got a lot of work to do. Let's get started. I want you to know that Sarah over there is vibrating with an asset energy, and she's going to need to take space in a minute. But there is no commentary in my head that's kind of like I'm just tuning into like a radio station and then following some instructions. I'm decoding my instrument, which is my body. So my body is a live, plugged in receptacle in this field, and the field as an energy vibrates through my somatic body, and I'm translating all of those cues into guidance. And I've learnt the language of how my body feels to specific things that need to happen in the field. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Totally with you. And it's like, I imagine it's for people who don't have this experience. This is like, wow, there's so much happening at the same time, and so much to sift through and navigate. And I imagine one of the most challenging pieces. And I'm curious for you, as you're training facilitators to do this, what is one of the biggest blocks that comes up for them, or the biggest challenges to being able to listen or facilitate in this way?
I think initially a lot of facilitators are under the performance anxiety of wanting to get it right. And they see it as there's a way to do it that's correct, and there's a way to do it that is incorrect. And then they get into a process of perfectionism and worrying about making mistakes. And they're not in the grace of making art out of a moment. They actually think it's about learning a skill, but it's an art, not a skill. And when facilitators realize that they're artists, not technicians or practitioners of a modality that has a step-by-step process, there is an allowance. Because as a facilitator, I can only feel the field when I'm relaxed. But if I'm in tension, trying to get it right, trying to find the right words, be managed in my whole expression, I block all my sensitivity. So how to get a training facilitator to relax? Well, that just takes a lot of practice. It's similar to flying a plane. I use this example a lot, like being able to go in a simulator and be put under stress and knowing exactly what to do through almost second nature. It's a fluent thing. At the beginning, everyone's trying to learn what buttons to press and it's sweating and figuring out all the moves. And then suddenly we just learn to feel the plane, and we can start to feel how the plane moves in the sky. And it's less about technical buttons. All that comes we still need to learn it. But once that's learned, there's a layer of fluency that comes where we're no longer flying the plane technically, but we're feeling the aircraft. Race drivers know this, that they don't need to figure out where to put their feet, what buttons to push. They're feeling the road through the steering wheel. They are receiving information. And facilitators who are beginning are trying to process what's happening versus just listening. And it's the same with all, I would say, complex psychomotor skills, sports, flying, these kind of things. There's a certain skill that needs to be learned, and then relaxation. And it's like the relaxation is then the key to success.
Yeah, I imagine, one of the strongest moments sometimes when watching facilitators is the moment where they lose the room. And I'm imagining some of that has to do with a lot of what you've named here around their blocking their own sensitivity, trying to get it right, trying to do the technical aspects. And I wonder for you, if and when, if it happens anymore, you lose the room, what is the best way back? Like, what happens for you internally in that moment? Like, okay, I think I've lost it. Then what's the next step?
Well, I haven't lost the room since 1984. So I have to think. I have to think back in my database.
Or when you're training facilitators and they lose the room, how do you help them get back?
No, I get it. It does happen, of course. Let me just speak to one of the causes of why I and others might lose the room. There are times when I feel personally charged with an opinion of how something should look and how something should go. And when I'm coming from my pain and I've not tracked that I am using my pain to make a point, and I try to bring in what I would call authoritarian or a voice that is too certain. And the way I call that is when we live in when we live in the answer, not in the question. Meaning there's an energy that I can go into that comes into this state of, I know, and this is my belief, and this is what's true, and I'm now going to push that into the field, and it comes out as controlling. There's got an ego defensiveness to it, and it has a heat signature that I can feel in my body. And I've recognized that when I bring that, it's usually because I'm triggered, defensive, not owning that defensiveness, and now trying to change the field so that I don't have to be exposed in that and be vulnerable. And I can then feel the people in the field tighten. Some of them don't know why. It's not a clear conscious, because I'm very good at masking what's going on. So some people would go, I have no idea what's going on, but I feel disconnected, tense, charged, and closed, and I can just feel like I'm losing them. So I've learned now what I've just described there is my mechanism of how I often lose the room. But for some other facilitators, it'll be completely different. For example, some other facilitators might lose presence, and they dissociate a little bit. They go a little bit into a brain fog, as if like they go, and they lose containment. I'm very good at containment, but I can sometimes go over contained, and people feel my authority go too strong. But for other people, they go too like loose. And when people don't feel held, they rebel and they push, and they start to test the container and go, are you there? Are you there? And that creates another version of losing the room. Another way of losing the room is somebody comes in with too much agenda and structure and plan, and the group can feel another energy wants to happen. And they can tell the facilitator isn't listening to what wants to happen. They're just doing their thing, and they are intellectually now driving the bus rather than feeling, there may need to be something different going on now. So those are three, for example, different versions of losing the room. But we all need to understand our way that we disconnect from the field. So I need to learn and discern and become very self-aware of, I recognize the heat signature. I recognize this egoic defensiveness now. And then recognizing and then owning it. That's the way. It's like to apologize. It's not to apologize. I'm so sorry. It's not that. It's not being sorry. It's like just saying, I've just realized I'm not in the energy where I'm feeling my heart right now. And I'm noticing I'm not able to feel you. And I'm sure that's having an impact on your closure right now and the closure that everyone's feeling. And I just want to take a breath, slow down. If you don't mind, I'd like to just reset. That's all it takes. I don't need to go into, I've got some daddy issues, and let me just take space and let me just figure it all out, and and then somehow process my stuff through the circle. I don't do that. I just name, like we're on a road and I've just come off path, and I just go, oop, you know what? I think I've come off. Let me just come back here again, and let's get on again. And the quicker we do that, the better. So we're not kind of detouring for hours or days. I remember I don't know if it wasn't 1984, of course, but there was, it happens less and less where I derail for a long period of time. Like I will feel it, and within minutes it comes back now. But in the olden days, when I first started, I would like stay with an energy for sometimes days. I was stubbornly holding on to like my righteousness around what needs to happen here. And sometimes I could pull it off and make something happen, but then I don't know, it's very draining and exhausting for the group and for me to be in that kind of push. And this is the tyrant shadow in me, and the part of me that I need to keep in check is the part that if I'm not listening, it's very easy for me to go into override and push forward. And I've done that in business. I've done that in relationships. I've had to really soften myself, tenderize my front body, and de-armor actually myself as a facilitator energetically. My spine is very open and available, but the front part of my body, it's needed a lot of de-armoring. I would hold grief here. I would hold tension, control, and that's been my work. And circle and heart IQ has been the medicine. It's softened and allowed me to crack open and feel my grief and release the trapped energies and to listen and become more sensitive to what's happening in the field and not be so forceful with it.
Yeah, I really want to appreciate that about you, Christian. It's one of the things that I really love and respect and admire and feel met in, is that as I've known you for the last, I don't know, 7+ years, you're constantly changing and evolving with the field. Like the facilitator you are now isn't the facilitator who I met you as. And that's not always the way that it is you would think it is. But I know many people I've known for 10 years, and they're exactly the same facilitator. They have the same speech, the same practices, the same workshop. It's like you can just experience what you experienced 10 years ago today. But I really love how you let yourself be changed by the field, and how you're so humble in even just the way that you've named these things. I'm touched a little, because it's like there's a particular courage and vulnerability to reveal that, and it speaks a lot to the integrity that I hold, or like the integrity that I see in you as a facilitator.
That feels good. I had this thing that came up as you shared that goes, yes, the light side of that is being able to change, adapt, upgrade, evolve. And then I had this kind of like chuckle inside of like, yeah, not everybody in my life appreciates how changeable I am.
Well, what would be the dark side of that?
Chaos. The inability to stay on track with a single focus. Like, let's just look at it entrepreneurially, coming up with an idea, a vision for what I want to create as the delivery vehicle for Heart IQ, like a course or an event. And then suddenly halfway through going, oh my God, I've just got this new idea, got this new inspiration. Let's change in the middle of it, and let's change again. And then my team going, where's he going to be next? What's he doing? And they can't keep up. And it's like putting out fires and building a paper mache thing that doesn't have really substance and strength, because it constantly moves and shifts. There's no strong, so that unwavering, unchanging, unmoving energy is something that's equally as important as the capacity to evolve and flow, and the balance of those two is where I'm trying to reach more in my life. Because if you were to speak to my team, I'd say that they were pretty burnt out by my change. And they would also say exactly what you just said. Like it's very enlivening to not be in this kind of like static, kind of like old energy all the time. It's always fresh and current and new and cutting edge.
Yeah, I've been challenged by you in that chaos as well. I'm like, I can recognize I know exactly what your team is speaking to. But it's nice to hear, like, I didn't connect it to this evolutionary part of you, and it's nice to connect it in there, and it softens something in me to see what that part is trying to do, or what the aim and the intention is behind that. One of the, as we've been working together with training facilitators and field facilitation and Heart IQ, one of the things that I saw so clearly, for anyone who's been in Christian space, or if you don't know this, Christian, you hold the field so masterfully that you make it look really easy. And that's one of the dangers for people who come into your space, is that they see it and they're like, oh, I could do that. And then when someone is sitting in that spot, which is probably very similar to the place where you mentioned you were sitting in Bali, it's like, oh shit, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And there was a day we were in training, and there was a circle that was happening, and the scene, or this experience that wanted to happen, was something along the lines of kind of a little bit more in the BDSM-y, kinky side of things, shadow side of things. And it was very clear very quickly that the facilitator didn't have that range in them, meaning they didn't know that space, or even have a relationship to it. And so it was really easy to see how fast they couldn't hold it, and that the space couldn't develop because of their lack of resonance or capacity. And I just wonder, for you, you've held so many spaces, and I can see that Circle continues to expand that in you. But is there a place where you're like challenged still in that? A place where there could be something that wanted to come to Circle that you might have to stretch to meet?
Yeah. This is great. So I would say there's definitely ranges in me on a personal level that aren't fully developed yet, that there's still more to kind of open to. I think that will always be the case. There's a few things I would want to say here, that as a facilitator, if we are putting out an invitation into the world, we often attract the people who meet our range. So there's a built-in calibration of the fact that we often attract the very kind of customers or clients, participants who will open as much as what we're capable of holding. There's usually a balance there, not always. And I discovered that when I had facilitators come into my field that I invited the people, and then they tried to serve those people. And it was like, they were like, whoa, I'm being taken to places I have never been, because they weren't the ones attracting the people. But then they went home and they go, oh, it was completely different. It was so much easier when I wasn't in your field. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. The other thing is, I feel like there's Christian, and then there's Christian, the channel, the part of me that opens to information that comes through rather than from. And it's not just a channel of information, it's a channel of range. And so what I've learned to do is, there are times in Circle where something comes alive, and me personally, I've never actually had the experience of this feeling, this emotion, this range, this kind of experience of heartbreak, loss, or death, or this kind of dark taboo. And then suddenly I feel filled with an energy that in that temporary moment gives me access to a range I didn't even have access to. So I would call these like unintegrated ranges. They come through almost as a channeled moment that can meet a moment, but it's not necessarily my day-to-day lived experience. So I can expand temporarily by energies that want to come through. That said, there are ranges as a facilitator, and the most big ones, I would say, like fire, water, masculine, feminine, soul forward, soul back. These are the core ranges, up, down, in and out, that I've got in balance. That there's a very strong anchoring to all those qualities. That allows me to be whole enough to meet 95% of what's going to come through Circle. But what I also do is I make sure that when there's a range I can't meet, I name it very clearly and say, you're entering a territory that is not familiar. But here's what I do in those moments. I use the field as a snooker table. I bounce off the field because I can now witness how this range is reverberating into other people's nervous systems, and use the body anchors of other people who are in touch with that range to give me information. So I might be in a blind spot going, I'm not feeling anything here, but I'm seeing how it's touching the rest of the people that are able to access it, and I'm decoding through their nervous system. Second, I have a team. Like, I want to co-facilitate with somebody who, like a Venn diagram, has an ownership of qualities that we meet in, but also are enough separate so that we together have a large range. And I can use the team as a way of trusting how to facilitate energies that might not be within my direct range and experience. But I, as a facilitator, don't need to know every range and be in touch with all capacities in order to meet what's in the field. If I have a really strong team, I allow the channel to open and I acknowledge my limitations.
Beautiful. What a pressure that takes off.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It
Totally.
speaks to the power of community as well, of like,
Yeah.
isolated
Yeah.
and like that I have to do it all or know it all or be it all for, and there's a translation of that both in this as a facilitator, but also in
Yeah.
relationship and also in community and in family,
Totally.
that as long as we're sourcing through the entire circle.
Yeah. Like, for example, I didn't actually answer your question. You asked what my
Yeah.
edges were. Let me, like, on an not on an intellectual level, but for example, on the topic of relationship, my experience has primarily been around the monogamous constellation and more traditional relating models. And so if couples or thruples or more alternative constellations come in and they're seeking to be met in more of their polyamorous culture, that for me is more of like, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question, or really, but I don't consider that a range. It's more of like an area of knowledge that I might not have a lot of experience in. So I often disclaim my relational advice because relational topics come up, and I'll just say, listen, I need you to know I have a certain bias to my cultural preference around how relating works for me, but I'm kind of like cautious about putting that onto anybody. The reason I love Circle is that it's not based on belief or opinions or having anybody buy into a dogma. Like, it's experiential in the way that you just have to feel the now moment, and the truth of your body does all the talking, not a concept or a belief.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you for those answers, and it totally makes sense. So two of my big buzzwords this year, which I think we share in common, one is coherence, which you've already spoken to, and the other is emergence. And I'd love to hear how you describe emergence.
For me, emergence is where separate, apparently disconnected ingredients can come together and form out of that more than the sum of the parts. So it's like, how does life come from a collection of cells, right? So we look at the body and we look at the trillions of cells that make up our body. At some point, those cells were individual, and then they became multi-celled, and out of those multiple cells, an intelligence emerged. And then from that intelligence, a consciousness emerged from that. Emergence is the revealing of a greater force from disconnected parts that have come together. So you bring people into a group, and there is an emergent field that comes from the group, but it's not coming from any one individual. And the field's intelligence is greater than the sum of all of those parts individually. So something is being birthed that arises through the interconnectivity of individual cells or people. So in Circle, we are the cell, and we have our own intelligence, and we have our own awareness, and we have our own memories and our own experience of life. And then we sync up and coherently connect with open hearts with others. And suddenly a field emerges, and it becomes thicker the more safety, the more coherence, the more resonance, and the more love and the more openness there is in that field and in that time. And then it kind of gets stronger and stronger. And then the clarity and the wisdom becomes more and more potent, and the medicine becomes stronger and stronger. So for me, that's what emergence is. It's the essence of something coming out, or it's like complexity arising from non-complexity, life coming from death, the intelligence that arises from the collective intelligence that arrives from individual fragments of do you understand what I mean? I'm not sure if I'm being super clear.
Yeah.
But it feels clear in my head, but it's sometimes the culture, we don't really have words necessarily for it.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine I think for me, I know this place quite well with you, but I imagine someone who doesn't have a lived embodied experience of being in an a space of emergence in a group container would be like, what the heck is he talking about?
Yes.
So maybe just taking another frame of like, what is the moment that when you're facilitating a group where you feel that the group is ready for an emergent process, or emergence is wanting to happen?
Okay, great. So let me just define it maybe this way, because there's in hard IQ, in the modality, we have like emergent circles, and then there's the concept of emergence as a core component of how we facilitate. So even in a structured circle where there's a clear invitation, what wants to emerge is still coming from the present moment, and it's not coming from the mind, and it's coming from a place where we are often surprised by what's present. So let's look at personal emergence. Personal emergence would be when I sit with myself and something arises through the natural intelligence of the body, and I'm surprised by it because my brain hasn't consciously brought it into attention. So when I surrender personally, I allow for things that are percolating to come up, and I might be quite surprised by what's there. It's not agendaed. Relationally, I could be having an interaction with somebody in circle, and I'm just inviting that person to slow down and track what's coming alive. And then between us, something arises. It's like there's a body between us. There's a meeting point, and suddenly I feel impulses and they feel impulses. And through the eye contact, we begin to surrender to something that is emergent between us. It's not me. It's not them. It's a body between us that grows and has information, and that we can surrender into and feel. So that's the interpersonal emergence. But then there's the collective emergence of like all of us together creating a field of wisdom and potent energy that we can all tap into. And then when we surrender together into that, magic can happen, and we don't often understand what's happening, why we're doing it. And that's usually what we call the emergent circles. It's where we're not even necessarily in a circle. We might all be following our own impulses and meeting different parts of us and surrendering, not really knowing what the meaning is in the moment. And we just allow ourselves to honor the body impulse, to honor our intuition, and to follow what feels true. And we're literally it's not a puppet in the string where we're like being controlled by some puppet master, but the field is moving through us rather than our brain and mind leading. And to me, that's what an emergent space is where what's driving the bus isn't an individual impulse coming from the personal channel, but we're all tapped into the transpersonal intelligence, and we are all kind of moving together from that higher level of emergent intelligence. And the healing that can happen is revolutionary, because I cannot make up what I've seen in circle. Like if I get to see the synchronicities, the profound moments that when the group starts to really honor the transpersonal intelligence, the perfection of the meeting points of like, how did that person find this person? They are the perfect combination that they needed for one another, the medicine that they got. And it's just like watching like art and just magic unfold of like, you just could not make this up. This is incredible. The timing, the range, the people, the place, everything is just like, OMG. And that's when people go, spirituality is fake. God doesn't exist. None of this is real. We just live in three-dimensional materialistic world. And I'm like, just sit in circle for a day and you will know. You don't even have to believe in God. You don't even have to believe in any of this. You just need to sit in it and go, holy shit. Now I get to feel it in the body and experience it with my own eyes. It's like nothing to believe. Just need to sit there and let it in.
I'm curious about the future of emergence. And I guess what I mean by that is, for me, this feels fairly new in group space, and I might be wrong. I just might not know about it, but it feels like a fairly new, pioneering way of facilitating and thing to experience and happen. And it feels like we're at the beginning stages. Like, and what I mean by that is when leading groups, there's still a training that's happening in emergence and how to be ready for that and what to listen to. And we're not yet at a place where a group of people just comes together and it's like, okay, we're going to do the thing now, you know? And so I'm curious if you see, like, what you see or start to sense as the future of emergence. Like, where might this be taking us? What is the benefit? What are your hopes? Like, where do you hope you're sitting with a group in 10 years maybe, and how this has evolved?
Yes. So I'm just going to share opinions. I don't know any of this, whether it's going to be true, but the trends I'm seeing is that over the 25 years that I've been doing this work, people are getting more attuned, somatically informed, and they're getting clearer and more conscious in their ability to track and understand their inner worlds. If I were to continue the trend, we're maybe opening up new centers of the brain that can create a form of beyond empathy and towards telepathy. So a capacity to actually really feel, understand, attune, and operate as a hive rather than an individual. So if you were to take emergence and then the capacity to surrender to the emergent intelligence, and the intelligence is informing the whole, if the whole was truly attuned, that whole would operate as one. So it's a form of unity consciousness that's beginning to emerge, where we get to dissolve boundaries and dissolve thought and mind and separation and the illusion of disconnect, and we begin to move as one. On a practical level, that's the return of village. That's the return of I'm not here alone, and that I as an individual thrive in tribe. My partner and I as a couple thrive in tribe, and so on and so forth. That there is, so I sense there's a growing capacity there. And being the tech nerd that I am, AI and the way that has grown is also a form of emergence. And I think that's what a lot of people are a bit curious about, is what is going to be the emergent intelligence that comes out of the systems that we're developing that are already so smart? Where is, like, if we know emergence is a property of life, that when you bring systems together, a more complex emergent quality arises out of those systems. If that's what's true, and we see that on the animal kingdom, we see that in the human kingdom, we're starting to see it in terms of computer networks, whoa, then it becomes like, how do we interact with that emergent intelligence? And actually, I'm curious about, where does human consciousness and AI consciousness meet? Do they meet? Do they blend? Are they compatible? Do they actually allow us to have a golden age of interconnectivity and togetherness and oneness and unity, or will it create polarization and war and destruction? And nobody really knows right now. Everyone has an opinion about it.
Wow, amazing. I'm so glad you shared that opinion.
One of my teachers said, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
Yeah, exactly. But that's, it's a pretty good asshole, if you ask me. Well, considering all that, you are a trainer of trainers. You have an amazing gift at, and I think it's one of the primary methods at which you work or hold containers is to teach teachers or facilitators. And I wonder, like, what's changing based off what's happening today in the world and in Hard IQ around the way that you train facilitators? Like, what's something that's no longer enough? What's something that you're like, this has to be different for facilitators to be at the level where they're able to hold groups today?
Just taking one step before that, one change that I'm noticing is that the market is quite saturated. There's more and more people wanting to facilitate groups, do workshops, offer different things. And it's not as easy as it used to be. It's getting harder. to get out there, to be seen, to have a distinguished, unique offering that compels people to trust you to hand over money. Economies are tightening. Deglobalization is creating more and more of a fear-based reality around money. Costs are going up. I remember being able to rent a hotel venue at a third of the price that these, as it is now. Like I'm noticing like it ain't getting any easier. So I think what needs to happen, people need to focus on mastery, not on jack of all trades. Let's learn a bunch of tools and be like everybody else. People need to come out and go the extra mile and really commit to being in devotion to a life path. If they really want to do this, that they're in, they're committing in. But on the flip side, I don't think facilitation's for everybody. I see a lot of people coming into trainings thinking that they want to end up learning to teach and learn how to facilitate groups, when in fact, what's most important for them is to transmit facilitation into a life skill. Like what if facilitator training wasn't about leading groups, but it was about how you can lead yourself in life better? And that what we need is actually the muscles and the gym to have better access to our own self-leadership and to be able to bring this into life. And so one thing that I'm realizing is that facilitators who try to learn this to teach others without fully embodying it as a frequency, as a form of transmission, as a way that they live life, is not going to work. And there is an invitation there, I think. In other words, I used to enroll hundreds of students, and my expectation was they're all going to be out there in the world sharing hard IQ. And what's changed today is that I want to invite hundreds of thousands of people to learn hard IQ, to make an impact in the world, to let this transmission be a seed for them in their life, their families, their children, and to let it come through that way. And then maybe 0.5%, 1% end up really being in the space where they're leading groups with it. Now that might sound like a horrible conversion, 1%. And yet there's so much value that comes from the facilitator training. I'm not attached anymore around whether somebody ends up doing it. As a career. I think it's actually very rare to build a career out of being a circle work facilitator. Yeah. I don't know. It's very rare when people, but that's not what I'm selling. I'm not promising like do this and you'll become a. I think some people know how to do that, and they know the business side of things, and they want to really devote themselves to that. But it doesn't matter to me, because facilitation is life. It's a life skill. It's not a professional skill. And that's what's changed for me is like, we have a professional track, but my primary work is to teach facilitation, which is how do you commune with the field? Because that's something that is necessary to lead and have healthy relationships, to have a healthy marriage, to have good parenting skills, to be able to lead yourself to joy and to move through trigger and trauma and fear, and knowing the difference between your personal and collective stuff that's spinning in your life. Everyone needs to learn how to facilitate. So that's what's changed, is that I've reorientated the goalposts.
Yeah, I love this. It really came through our last facilitator training, which was this phrase, facilitate your life, or as in facilitation, or as in circle, as in life, has really landed. And I really love this. So this fits. As we're coming to a close now, it's hard for me to end because I feel like we're in such a good flow right now, and we've like cracked something open. I'm like, oh, let's just keep milking it. But but we'll start to wrap it up. I'd love to ask, what is one thing you'd like to see shift or change in our world of transformational group spaces?
Apart from the weird vegan vegetarian meals that are always served at them. Sorry.
Valid, valid.
As a retreat center owner, that's of course part of my reality too. Yes, something about vulnerability being the new power. And what I mean by that is where a leadership comes that is very human and honoring. Yes, of course, we have the teacher, the sage, the wise one inside, but something that is more holistic, where teachers are willing to bring all their shadows and all their parts and their humanity and their, I don't know, I feel like I want to, and I feel like I do imprint and show that kind of like roundedness that I think is really powerful, that creates so much safety. I think people are going to get so much better results when they show up more as who they are rather than some role of a facilitator. So somehow about de-rolling facilitators. And I would love people, I think what needs to change is people need to come into relationship with what this field is. They need to slow down. They need to attune to what we're talking about here and have their own relationship to the field. I think this is so, I would love to feel that. Even it's, whether they're learning circle or not, it's like, as you know, you could be leading a structured workshop, but the workshop has a group of people that's creating a living field. And how are we in relationship to that so that we are listening and really feeling and attuning? And I think as well, the last thing I'll say is, and I mentioned this at the Embodied Emergence event we just did, which was a lot of people can use personal development and circle as an addictive process of seeking sensation, wanting more, going to the next thing. Okay, I don't feel alive and met in my life, but I feel alive and met here. And we can create this culture of seeking and always wanting more and always getting hungry for meeting the edge, getting to the next place and feeling alive through being in group spaces. And it almost becomes a bit of a life hack that gets a bit addictive, and it meets a craving for our life being a bit mundane. And it's like, well, I'm not met anywhere else, but I'm met in this space. And I want there to be consciousness around that in group facilitators, and to actually not fall into the trap of making their events always so sensational and driven by sensation, especially in the tantric spaces, where it kind of like meets that hunger to be fucked open by something, someone, some glorious moment that can never be reproduced in a normal relationship, potentially, it's like, and then we end up having a distortion around it. And on the flip side, I wouldn't want the therapeutic group space to become so overly woke and sensitive that we're having to be so tiptoeing around every single issue and words and be creating ultra safe spaces where nobody meets edges. I want to invite a culture where it's okay to be inappropriate. It's okay to be politically incorrect sometimes. It's okay to be I don't know, like that. There's something about the over kind of. It's like, oh, I need a trigger warning. I need safety. I need this, and it's like everything is outside of self. It's like I need this environment to be in a certain way, and then I'll be safe to open. It's like so there's an energy in there of like, hey, come on, build your capacity, build your resource. There's a shit storm coming in the world. I need to be ready to meet it. And this energy ain't it. So
good.
that's kind of what I want to bring as well. So as you can see, it's very multidimensional. Yeah. It's like I want there to be a ton of safety in the group, but not over safety. Yeah. It's like it's subtle. Yeah. Hopefully everyone listening can get the subtlety there.
I love it. It's beautiful. I'm totally on your team. I have one final question now, considering what you said about seeing a world where there's more vulnerable, heart-centered leaders. For the people who are facilitators who are listening to this, what's a practice or a skill or something that you'd recommend for someone who wants to lead more from the heart?
Other than just setting up a retreat and spontaneously sitting in a circle and seeing what happens.
Other than that, yeah. Other than walking off the deep end, what's on the other end of the spectrum? Yeah.
So how to invite people to come into more heart-connected leadership.
Yeah. If someone, yes. Yeah.
I don't know, I'm trying to find a way to say it without it sounding trite, like it came out of a Christmas cracker.
Christmas cracker.
Because, well, you know, it's like the little wisdom thing is
yeah.
like, you need to love yourself.
Yeah.
And yet there is something about, like the heart opens when we stop seeking externally to be met for validation, for approval, for confirmation, and we get stuck into this kind of like mental masturbation role of trying to perform, blah, 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 blah. And there's a relaxation and a leaning back into our intrinsic goodness that opens the heart and allows us to be felt, to feel, to create a sense of trust. It's like, it's a combination of my journey of my own embodiment, my own willingness to meet my own shadows, to do my own inner work, but also not doing the work because there's a never-ending work to do. Like some people get into this pattern of like, it's never enough. And driving the bus is consistently this unworthiness, this sense of like, I'm not ready to lead workshops because I'm not healed enough. I haven't had enough experience. It's always, I'm not ready, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, blah, 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 blah. And there's something that needs to kind of like be reset beyond all of that narrative, where somebody can actually just simply say, and come from a different sponsoring energy. I don't really have, a clear practice for you. It's like nothing is here to say, because it feels like if I were to say, oh, they need to do this, this, and this, it might lighten or distill something too simplistic. And it's almost like I feel a resistance to like saying there's an easy path to opening the heart. It is a path that takes enormous courage. It's a path that takes enormous devotion. It's a path that will be constantly, there's going to be pain along that path. You're going to meet everything that has caused you to close. All your fears, all your insecurities, everything that you could imagine. It's like, so there must be a reason why to do it that goes beyond your personal. Like, I feel blessed because I was literally touched by something 20 odd years ago. In the middle of the night, I was awakened with this white light. I cannot describe where it came from, what it is. I have my theories around it. But in that moment, I got shown something. And I was brought into contact with my deepest purpose that went way beyond self. And I touched something so fucking incredible that my life has been a devotion to that. And when I fear or start to get disenchanted, unmotivated, I feel my heart close, I start to go into doubt, I draw on that North Star. I draw on and the word I would describe it is like, I see a world that is unified without borders, without like a humanity that is like, it's like it lives in my cells as if like I live in that future already, because I was given that imprint that came in 20 years ago through this light, was a cellular memory of what's possible for humanity as a human family. And it lives in me as a transmission. And what I'm grateful for that is that whenever I'm in my small stuff, don't sweat the small stuff. When I'm in that energy, it doesn't matter. I don't know how to describe it. It's like connecting to the deeper why for our existence. And there's something in that when we realize that we are a transmission for something greater. and we're a vehicle for something that's happening in the world that's coming through many, many different vessels and vehicles right now. I don't know. There's something about that keeps my heart open and vulnerable and light, and I'm not really attached to seeing it change either. That's another part of it. It's like, this might take 1,000 years, might never happen. I don't need to see it happen in my lifetime. There's a lot of people who go, no, I need the world to change. I need to see something change, and they've got a need for something to be different. And I'm like, no, it's okay. It's okay. The change happens when we relax from needing it to change. I don't know. There's all these different parts to this equation, but those are a few thoughts that come up as you ask that question.
Thank you. No, it's the perfect answer. It's the perfect answer, which is find what you're so devoted to that it brings you beyond your small self and into the larger why for humanity and for the world. Like then it becomes, that fits. It resonates with my path as well.
Yeah, I get it. I think that's what's allowed both of us and others to stay at a high level game. Otherwise, we would have quit ages
it's not
ago.
worth it. if you're in the short-term satisfaction, you're going to be sadly disappointed.
Yeah. There are easier ways to make money. There's easier ways to have a simpler life.
Easier ways to inflate your ego.
Yeah. OnlyFans.
Oh, Christian, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. This has been perfect and inspiring and enlivening and humbling and reassuring, and can't wait to create with you again.